good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to QI, the panel show where fortune favours the brains. Tonight's show is all about luck and loss, so without further ado, let's meet our lucky losers. The fortunate Sandy Toksvig. The fortuitous Danny Baker. The jammy Jeremy Clarkson. And Mr. Jinx, the Jonah Allen David. I'm afraid your buzzers are a bit of a lottery, so Sandy goes...
Release the balls.
Danny goes...
No more bets, please.
That sounded like you, didn't it? Yeah. Jeremy goes...
I've literally no idea what that was.
I think that was a jackpot. Yeah. Now, Alan goes... Now, seeing as this is the Lucky Losers show, whoever gets the lowest score wins.
Well done, Ellen. Well done already. Congratulations.
So, what you have to do, obviously, is try and collect as many klaxons as you can.
Oh.
And that's going to be interesting, we hope. Oh. Quite interesting. Fingers on the buzzers. Here's your first chance. What is the oldest you can be on a club 18 to 30 holiday?
No more bets, please.
Yeah.
30.
Very well done. See, you've got the idea. There's the klaxon. But anyone like to have a go at the right answer? What do you imagine is, in fact, the right answer? We won't punish you for that.
Surely there's some leeway. Those ladies look a little over 30.
Is it sort of mid-20s? Are they actually... Is it the other
But
one?
they should put it down the other way. No, it is a little bit older than 30.
35.
173.
173. That's right.
Is it 31?
No, it's 36, rather bizarre. Well, the oldest you can leave the country with a club 18 to 30 ticket in is 35, but you might have your birthday while on the holiday.
Is there not a degree of sadness in your life if you decide to spend your 36th birthday on an 18 to 30 holiday?
That woman on the left just turned 36, is that what... Sorry, I've got to go now.
Yep, there you go. In theory, you could celebrate your 36th birthday on a club 18 to 30 holiday. So, what is the youngest you can be?
No more bets,
Yeah, yeah, whoa!
18.
Oh, he gets those klaxons, doesn't he?
I like to win.
Have another go.
Well, clearly they're keen on that margin of error.
Yeah.
There's clearly some margin of error, so it can't surely be the same margin. It can't be 6 years, it can't be that...
No, it wouldn't be 6. That would be awful.
12 to 36.
It's a
the
recipe.
perfect match.
I'm on the phone to Operation U-Tree as we speak. No.
Well, it can't be much more. It's 16 or 17.
17 is the right answer.
I'm winning now, so therefore I'm losing. Oh.
Yeah.
Now, a question especially for Alan to lose points with in this Lucky Losers show. Which mammal has the most cells in its body?
Blue whale.
It does. And you get a lot of points for that. It's the blue whale bonus, and you get points. And what do points mean? Bad surprises. Yeah. No, it does indeed have the most cells because it's the largest animal. And the larger the animal, the more the cells. But you can claw your way back if you could tell me to the nearest trillion how many cells a human being has. It's a certain trillion.
2.
Oh, it's a bit more than that. It's 30 trillion.
Is it?
Yeah.
What if you were a fat blue whale?
Yeah. Well, no, that's a human I'm talking about. A blue whale would be 2,000 times more cells.
Oh, I see.
So you would think, because it has more cells, that blue whales would have more cancers, or at least have a greater number of them, because it has so many more cells. And in fact, it has fewer than we do. And nobody knows why.
Well, it doesn't smoke. It's obvious reason.
There is that. But it's known as Peto's paradox.
Do they die of cancer, whales?
All mammals can get it. People who've had cats and dogs will know it's a very sad thing. But, you know, all animals get cancer. So.
Oh.
So 5 points available, 5 minus points, I should say. If you can tell me what species of whale that is there,
Blue.
It's not a blue, actually. We should have offered you a blue, but in fact that is a...
Is it a sperm?
No, sperm are the ones with a big
Hump.
flat.
Fin.
It's a hump. It's a humper. Now, before we continue, I should let you know that as this is the L series, one of the questions coming up will have a lavatorial theme. The answer will be wholly lavatorial. And if it is, you can ask if you can spend your penny, right?
So if
you
it's a
think-
laboratory question, I'll bring that out.
Yeah,
Right.
and you get extra points. That's right. So anyway, moving on. Which good cause benefited from Britain's first lottery?
Dale Winton. Dale Winton's tanning salon.
I'm sure it did very well,
There you go.
but it wasn't Britain's first lottery.
Is it the Bank of England?
No, that's a very good point. That was almost like a lottery. The
Yeah.
shares were issued to raise money. And
For the army,
virtually, yes, it was
Yeah.
virtually like a lottery. But this one was similarly to raise money
Building?
for a military venture, or at least for a military, perhaps for defence, originally.
With Drake.
Yes, it was indeed in 1567.
It was Drake.
So what it was, yeah, it
The
was.
Armada.
Doing in my
It
head.
was, yeah.
In my head.
I'm very impressed. It was Queen Elizabeth and her navy, and indeed Drake was one of her leading figures. There she is.
right
It was.
guess.
She realised that should King Philip of Spain send the fleet, which in Spanish is
Armada.
Armada, yes.
I'm genuinely still reeling
Yes,
from the fact that's in my head.
It's really great when that happens, isn't it?
No, it's odd. It's a little weird.
And so she thought to raise money, she'd try and get those who could afford it to
Yeah.
buy lottery tickets, and the prize would be enormous. And the money raised would be enormous. Now, what do you think the average wage was per year?
It can't have been much.
No, it wasn't much. The average
heck?
annual income in 1600 was about £9.
Oh.
So tickets were 50 pence, we've called it now, 10 shillings each, which is about 3 weeks' wages.
Yeah.
So only the rich would be able to.
Only the rich would be able to. The prize on there was £5,000, 5,000 then pounds,
Yeah.
which is millions today.
Buy America.
You buy a huge estate. Plus, it was paid partly in cash, but also in gold and silver and fine tapestry and fabrics, and something really extraordinary to encourage sales. And this later cropped up in one of the most popular games in our culture as something that you could tuck away under the board of the game for future
Monopoly, a
use.
get out of jail free card.
You've got a get out of jail free card for anything except murder, serious felonies, treason, and
parking.
Yeah. Parking your horse, obviously, that was not allowed. Or piracy, that was one. But everything else was, yeah, very good,
Well, I
wasn't
would
it?
sell tickets now.
Yeah, brilliant idea. So, the good cause in the first national lottery was beating out the Spanish. What did newsagents sell that makes people suddenly want to vote Tory?
Is it going to be the Daily Mail?
Makes me want to vote communist.
Will you get one for the Daily Telegraph as well?
You probably might, yeah! Exploring his way back to victory. No, this is a very odd thing. Well, newsagents sell
What
them.
about the Sun?
This is not a newspaper, I would now say, but it's something newsagents sell.
They sell something that makes you want to vote Conservative.
Well, it does if things turn out well after you've bought this particular item.
OK.
So we're really back to the last question.
It's a lottery ticket.
It's a lottery ticket. If you win the lottery, many Labour voters who won the lottery said they changed their mind and were now Tory voters. So,
Depressing comment on humanity.
it is a bit perhaps even more depressing is that the American therapists have a name for the syndrome, which is sudden wealth syndrome, which is presumably what they suffer from whenever they name a syndrome. They make money by deciding you have a syndrome.
That's a really boring name for it, though. Couldn't they come
Sudden
up with
wealth.
something
You
else?
think so, yeah. But these are the same people who said that if you lose someone you love, they die, and you are still.
So impressive.
The day had to happen.
That was an explosion.
You're right.
There are people in California now looking at their seismographs going, Jesus Christ, what is that? Is there
I said the word die. No, do it again.
So sorry for
Sorry, no, it's fine. It was a revolting thing about psychologists who basically said that if someone you love dies and you're still inconsolable with grief 6 months later, that is a mental condition. It's not
What's
health.
that called? Just 6 months later,
it's called,
dead
it's
person
called
syndrome?
grieving. It's called grieving. It is perfectly reasonable, in fact.
I think a syndrome I read of recently is, you know when you come out the pictures and you sneeze? Do you do that when you go from a dark thing or look at the sun?
Yes, or
You
look at
get
the sun,
that?
yeah.
It's got a real fancy name now.
I've never sneezed when walking through the dark. Is that not?
You don't suffer from it. Don't mock people
But you
who
don't
do.
go, presumably, you don't go to matinees. You go to evening performances. So it comes out and it's dark, but it's from the dark into the light.
It's a syndrome. It's a real syndrome.
We've got the name in front of me. Look, my elves have been busily hacking away. It's called autosomal dominant compelling heliophthalmic outburst.
There you go.
I want to have him round for dinner.
For short, it's called Achu syndrome. We're still with lotteries. This is more astonishing. I mean, what a coincidence. In 2001, guess who won the Zimbabwe Banking Corporation's jackpot?
No. Mugabe.
It was Robert Mugabe. What are the odds against that? I mean...
Wow, lucky man.
Yeah, lucky. Anyway, less fortunate was Clarence Inaction Jackson. The name tells it all. He won in 1995 $5.8 million on the Connecticut lottery. And
didn't get it.
Failed to turn up.
Pick it up.
The collect-by date passed, and they wouldn't pay out. He tried to sue, and he lost. Very sad. And there was a woman in 1980 called Maureen Wilcox who chose the correct winning numbers for both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Unfortunately, she did...
He was burned as a witch.
No, she played the Massachusetts numbers in Rhode Island.
No, the odds against that was just 30 trillion to 1.
Quite. Anyway, yes, lottery winners tend to turn right after collecting their winnings. Now, this next question is even more incomprehensible than usual, so I thought I'd spice things up by getting you all to wear hats. Could you pass that to Jeremy? And you can have that, and yours, you'll notice, says leader. And you can
I have the
fez
largest head
there,
in the world.
and you can have a nice straw boat. It's extraordinary. You do have a large head.
Enormous head.
Elmer Fudd.
Right, OK, here we go with this question. What do Amy Freeze and Larry Sprinkle have in common with Dee Whedon and A.J. Splatt?
Is this some
Are these
dark
real
part
people?
of the internet?
It's a real thing. It's not a dark part of the internet. It's a joyous part of real life.
They're real people.
Whedon and Splatt are both Australian urologists. And in other words, they cover splatting and being weed on. Well, not necessarily being weed on. Sorry. And Amy Freeze and Larry Sprinkle are American...
Chefs.
Antifreeze manufacturers.
Ice cream.
Garden sprinkler.
meteorologists, weather forecasters. So it freezes, you get a
I
sprinkle
don't
of rain.
believe that's their real name.
It really is. Now, what is the name for people having jobs that come after their names? So if you were a baker, say.
Yes, exactly. I don't know the
My
term.
dad was a clerk.
And your dad, exactly, that would do it.
Yeah.
It's called nominative determinism.
It's called nominative or onomastic determinism because it's you're determined by your name.
Nice.
But I've always been interested by this because there was a family many years ago and they were called the Gauntlets. And they christened their son Victor.
I knew Victor. He ran Aston Martin.
Exactly. He was destined to run Aston Martin simply because his parents had christened him Victor. If they'd called him Stan, he would have been a plumber. You see it all the time, where somebody called Fotherington's Major Fortescue has always got a sandwich shop in Fulham, whereas somebody called Ron Twat is a builder from somewhere. And it's very simple names tend to...
I know Ron Twat.
Very good builder.
Surely Ron Twat should be a gynecologist. Surely.
Now you can see...
Well, some examples you might know. They're called aptronyms as well because they're apt nyms. Mark Avery, where would he work?
In an age.
Well, no, that's too specific.
Slimbridge.
He's of the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, yes, very good. The poet Wordsworth, when you think about it, he went to Cambridge to read mathematics, and he probably thought, well, I'm called Wordsworth. Words.
Stephen, why am I wearing this hat?
Well, you'll see. You're the leader. You've got to have a way of indicating your leadership, and you're the leader.
I did a programme years ago sailing around Britain with John McCarthy, and we had to go and be fitted for life jackets, at Crusader life jackets, and they were fitted, and I promise you I've still got his card, by a man called Will Drown.
It's just fantastic.
It's just crucial. There you are. If I told you that two of our biggest fans are called Joyce Baker and Amanda Pastry, what do you think you might have handed out to you?
Is it cake?
Well, it's not cake, actually. It's biscuits, so you can help yourself. You have to eat them
Well,
all.
it's nice, but mildly disappointing.
Yeah, you've got to eat. This is all part of the experiment that you eat me up. Did you eat yours?
Okay.
The third one has to go, and Alan's taken the third one. And that's the important thing. Because he's got the word leader on it, this happens in experiment after experiment with human beings. If you tell someone they're the leader, and you give them three or something, an odd number, with an even number of people, the leader is basically always takes.
Well, it's a bit like my father once went out for tea with somebody, and two cakes were delivered. One was very small, one was very large. And the chap just leant over and took the large one, and my dad said, if that had been me and I went first, I would have taken the small one. He said, well, you've got it anyway, so what are you complaining about?
So logical. It's brilliant.
I think boys and girls have a very different way of doing this. I was once at a party, and they were handing out things on the slate they seem to do nowadays with canapes.
Yes.
And there were
Slate
two
of planks.
small canapes on this piece of slate, and there were three of us. And all three of us went, no, that's very kind. Thank you, like that. And as we were saying it, a man walked past, picked up one canapé, put it on top of the other, and ate them both.
Excellent.
So he ate the other one, not just because he's Alan Davis.
So because he's got leader, and he felt like somehow it was just put into his brain that he was the leader, and he would have that. It's not behavioural.
Jeremy.
Behavioural science is...
I was looking forward to that bit.
Hand in your plates.
It doesn't help that I forgot I'd got leader
your
on my
hat.
hat.
Yeah. Oh, well, you forgot you were the leader. That really
Yes.
doesn't help.
No.
No.
I'll eat those as well, if you like.
What? Yeah. Right, so, skimming on. What did lucky old Edward VII use this for?
Oh, I say.
I say lucky, I mean, it's extraordinary.
Oh, God.
What do we know about it? No, quite wrong. He didn't poo on yellow silk.
No, I thought
You thought it lifted up into
This is
a...
Mark Commode. Yes, I did. I
It's
thought it was-
sexual of some kind of
It was sexual, yeah.
It's sexual, and I'm not going to say it on television, frankly. I'll just be in trouble.
Well, no, you won't. I mean, it's not... I mean, it's...
Well, I will a bit.
Yeah.
For what I've got in mind. If I I guess a young lady sits on the top bit, and he's not on the... He's elsewhere.
Well, this is what we find hard to work out. The Chabanais was a maison de passe in Paris, a brothel, as we would say, and he had this constructed for him. It was called the Siège d'Amour, the seat of love. And the idea was that he could service, pleasure, have his way with two prostitutes at the same time.
Oh.
How this worked, I'm not quite sure. I say at the same time, I mean that...
With his extra penis.
It's
The king's penis.
Oh,
There's two penises.
It's got stirrups at the top, so there's
it
clearly
has
somebody...
got stirrups. Her legs could go... Oh, his.
Is this why Queen Victoria didn't talk to him? What have you got there now, dear? Your Majesty.
Dirty Bertie, as he was known, quite right. His name was Bertie.
Do you know that wonderful story about he had long-standing affair with Lily Langtry? Probably it's not true at all, but it is said that he was very cross with her one day, and he said, I've spent enough on you to build a battleship, and she said, you spent enough in me to float one.
Whoa! Now, what's the worst thing you can do with a gimpy?
Gimpy.
Remove her leaf?
Well, that would... well, she would be upset. It's wipe your bottom. You've missed your spend a penny chance.
Does it do something? Does it make it poisonous or something? Does it do something dreadful to you?
I think poison is... It's kind of poison, but it's sort of worse than that.
Is it full of bugs that crawl up your
It's
bum?
like, imagine a stinging nettle turned up to the absolutely unbearable max.
Why would you wipe your bottom with it? Just
Well, because it looks a bit like a leaf.
Oh,
that
a
would be
dock
safe
leaf
to.
type thing, I see.
Yeah, dock leafy sort of thing. It's from Queensland, and it has one of the most vicious stings in nature. A brush against it feels apparently like being burnt with hot acid and electrocuted at the same time.
Ooh.
According to one account, a soldier in the bush in the Second World War was caught short and picked the wrong leaf and found himself in so much pain that he shot himself.
No.
That was a serious... I mean, just the agony of it. One of the first mentions is from 1866. A surveyor reported that his pack horse was stung, got mad and died within 2 hours. Les Moore, a scientific officer with the Queensland government, was stung across the face, ended up looking like Mr. Potato Head, apparently.
I still think it can't be as bad as the toilet paper we had at boarding school.
Izal and Bronco.
I used to write home to my mother on it, airmail letters. That's how bad
Yes,
it was.
It was crispy tissue.
That shiny stuff.
Nothing
Izal.
would stick
Yeah.
to it. It was like grease paper. You just
extraordinary.
think, well,
Why did they
I've
ever
definitely
think-
had a poo, but there's no evidence. Come off on it. It seemed to serve no purpose.
Shall we move along?
Yes. Let's do that. So, you want to spend a penny round, after all. And if you're caught short in the bush, don't use a gimpy-gimpy. You might end up shooting yourself. Now, which football team is the worst in the world at losing major trophies?
Just losing the worst in the world. So it's a team that presumably has never won a game. Should be
bad.
any team
They've
that
won
only
quite
been-
a lot of games. They've even won trophies.
Have they had the trophy
But then they've
stolen?
lost them.
They've lost
They've
them.
lost them.
Would that,
Yeah.
Aston Villa?
Very
Ah,
good.
well, there you go.
You're back in Birmingham
brilliant.
again now, and you're being rude, aren't you?
By knowing so much.
How do you know that?
He does a sports programme. He's a...
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
I know, yeah.
I
yeah.
must listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the 1964 FA Cup final, which was won by...
West Ham.
you can see Bobby Moore there. Who was their manager?
At that point, 1964 would have been not Ron.
It was Ron.
it
Ron
was, yeah.
Greenwood, yeah.
Ron Greenwood.
He took it home by tube, discreetly covering
Yeah.
it. That lady, she's got her eye on it. Well, Ron Greenwood had good reason to be worried, and that's the point. Football trophies do have a history of going missing. And Aston Villa seem to have been more to blame than anyone else. In 1895, their FA Cup was stolen from the window of a sports shop in Birmingham. And 63 years later, a man called Harry Burge confessed that he had been the man who'd stolen it, and he'd melted it down and made counterfeit half-crown coins.
Wow.
The second major trophy to have been mislaid by Aston Villa was the European Cup in... What year did they...
1981.
Yes, they mislaid it in 82. Two members of the...
1982.
It would have been, yes. Two members of the team decided to take the cup to a darts match where it disappeared. And many years later, a man called Adrian Reed was identified as the culprit. He took it to a local police station, but it didn't end there because the police decided to have a football match for it. So they kept it, so that they could brag about being the European Cup winners. And the FA Cup gets damaged so much every year that it has to get repaired every single year because it gets bashed about in the bath. So, Aston Villa may not have a great record of winning trophies, but they have a rather impressive record of losing them. Speaking of losers, it's time for the lucky dip that is general ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. And don't forget that tonight the lowest scorer will be the winner. Which day is added to a leap year? Yay.
February the 29th.
Yeah, well done, absolutely. No, it isn't.
Right. Well, it is. Standing my ground on this one.
What is... They squeeze into the middle of February and add an extra 24th, so then the 24th becomes 25th, 25th becomes 26th, 26th becomes 27th, 27th becomes 28th, 28th becomes 29th. The reason for that is that the Roman calendar was divided into three. The calends, the nones and the ides. And when it came to discovering, which they did, that a year was actually not 365 days, but 365 days and a quarter, they added it into one of those calendar series. Now, you may say this is just ridiculous. They added 29, but they didn't. And in fact, the proof of this is that in Denmark, the day on which a woman is allowed to propose to a man is the 24th of February, not the 29th.
So there's an extra day...
That's the reason.
There's an extra day in the middle of February that, apart from Denmark, nobody else has noticed.
Well, the Catholic Church did until the 70s, so it was St. Matthias's Day.
So vicars would go, no, it's the secret day today.
Yeah. St. Matthias's Day was the 24th of February, but on leap years it was the 25th.
I was with you. Alan.
Yeah, I know, right. Well, it's good, because he got his extra points.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, you see,
You
don't
lucky
forget that.
bastard, as
So,
it turns out.
the day you add for a leap year is actually February the 24th. In which year did World War II begin?
No more bets, please.
Oh, yes.
1939.
Well, now there, well done.
Coming up on the rail.
Yes, absolutely. Overuse of the whip.
I just want to make sure it's working.
Yes, he's still winning.
39.
He just said that.
I know.
It doesn't work
I was
twice.
just waiting
It's a
to
nice
hear
thought.
why it wasn't.
Well, that's a very Anglo-Franco point of view. Certainly it's when the British and the French joined the war, but before then, the Germans had been at war with other countries, and the Chinese had been at war with the Japanese. That was a very global sort of event. It spread out, and of course there were alliances and other such things. So Britain joined World War II in 1939, but it had been going on for at least since 1937, and arguably since 1935. Now, what is the length of an Olympic swimming pool?
No more bets, please.
50 metres.
100 metres.
Whoa, 50 metres, no. It is counted as 50 metres, but it isn't 50 metres.
50 metres.
According to the Fédération Internationale Natation, de Natation of Swimming,
Those bastards.
the Olympic swimming pools are oversized by a centimetre at each end. Why?
So you don't bash your ankles when you do that spin-turn
No,
thing?
it's not that. What do you need in order to have an Olympic race?
A winning tape.
Well, you need a lap counter, and you need something that makes sure that the guy has completed the lap,
sensor.
or the girl has completed the sensor pad. At each lane, you need one of those, which is a
That they have to
centimetre
touch
at each end. What about peeing in the pool? Is that considered a bad thing by Olympic swimmers?
Oh, it is bad. It's very bad, isn't it?
Pooing's right out, but...
I think it doesn't mix with the chlorine, it mixes with the chlorine.
Well, Olympic swimmers are perfectly happy to do it, and perfectly happy to admit that they do it. And Michael Phelps, of course, the greatest Olympian of all time in terms of his medal haul, the old bucket hands himself.
Oh, Pissy Phelps.
He says, yeah. He says, everybody pees in the pool. It's kind of a normal thing to do for swimmers. When you're in the water for 2 hours, we don't really get out to pee. Chlorine kills it.
2-hour races he been out?
No, but they do actually practice. Well, the fact is, an Olympic-sized swimming pool is actually 2 centimetres longer than you think.
And full of piss.
And full of urine. How old do you have to be to go on a Club 18 to... Oh, that must mean that we've come to the end of the show. Let's look at the scores and see who's tonight's lucky loser. Well. The clear, outright, and extraordinary winner with an amazing -23 is Danny Baker! In second place, with a very, very impressive -5, Jeremy Clarkson. The wrong side of the ledger with +3, Sandy Toksvig. But the joker in a pack of 52 cards. Yes, +52 for Alan Davis. The blue whale was a very bad call. That's all from Sandy, Danny, Jeremy, Alan and me, and I leave you with the last word from actor Edmund Gwenn. When asked if dying was tough, he said, yes, it's tough, but not as tough as doing comedy. Good night.